and today we are going to learn about tactics in M&As. So you first need to understand the difference between friendly takeover and the hostile takeover. A friendly takeover is a merger or an acquisition in which the target, the company that will be acquired, is willing to negotiate, or at least they are agreeing on certain terms. So in that case, what you have to do as a acquirer is to provide a compensation for the management and the board, and then they will be satisfied and they are going to give up their company. So the process in this kind of friendly takeover is that you contact with the management, and then the management will submit the will deliver your offer to the board of the directors. So management will provide information about your offer to the board of director, and then the board of director will vote and they will decide whether to take this offer or to reject this offer. And if they agree to accept this offer, then you can go to the next step, where there will be a shareholders meeting. And then here in this meeting, all shareholders will vote against or in favor of the offer. And if the majority of the shareholders agree, then this target firm will come to your hand. So this is a general step in a friendly takeover when the management team and the board of directors are not in a strongly against of your offer. However, sometimes they don't like this because they don't want to be acquired. So in that case, the management team and the board of directors will not approve your offer, so that you don't have a chance to have a shareholders meeting in the target company. This situation is called as hostile takeover. In news media and a lot of dramas and movies and other kinds of media, you often see a lot of hostile takeovers where the shareholders, managers, and directors are against an acquisition of another company. However, actually, the situation in reality is somewhat different from what is depicted in the movies. So during 2015 and 2019, there were in total about 35,000 acquisitions in the US. This is huge because US economy is very large. However, only among those 35,000 acquisition cases, only about 150 cases are recorded as hostile. So it takes only about less than 1%. So it means the others, 99% are classified as friendly takeovers. And why there are so many differences between reality and what we feel? The reason is because some acquisitions may start as hostile takeover. However, as the negotiations go further, suddenly the acquirers were able to obtain the approvals, so the approvals from the managers and the directors, so it comes to an end as a friendly takeover. Second, the hostile takeovers are the situations where the managers and directors are against the takeovers, and this is possible when there are certain defensive tactics prepared for the company. That those defenses are going to be discussed in our next section, but because they are very strong, the defenses are so strong, so that the hostile takeover, in these hostile takeovers, the acquirers cannot proceed, so there is no acquisitions at all. So that's why there exists only a few cases that are done in hostile takeovers. And final reason is because nowadays there is no necessity to do such takeovers anymore. So in the past, when the business administration, the study of the business administration was not that popular in during 1970s or 80s, at the time, because managers were not very good for the existing companies, so through the acquisitions, the value of the company was possible to be improved. So that's why there had been a lot of hostile takeovers. However, nowadays, because many managers are doing great, because they already learned from their courses in undergraduate school, and also through their MBA courses, now they have better knowledge about how to manage a company effectively, so they are doing very great. So the acquirers don't feel the necessity to do such hostile takeovers, because there is no improvement expected. Then, although many takeovers are done in a friendly way, still some may, in some cases, we may find some hostile takeovers than what an acquirer can do. So there are several tactics that the hostile acquirer can do. The first of all, we have tender offers, and secondly, we have proxy fights. So these two things are the primary measures for the acquirers to win this battle between the acquirer and the target. So first, we have a tender offer. A tender offer, as you already are familiar with the term, this is an offering to buy a share. So you already heard this term when we talked about the share repurchase. So in a share repurchase, the company itself can buy back the shares, but at the time they can use the tender offer. So in the takeover situation, the tender offer means similar thing. So the tender offer means that certain company declares that the company itself will buy the shares from the shareholders. However, here, this specific company that is buying is not the company itself. So this buying company is the acquirer, and the sold shares are of the target. And this acquirer, the buyer, is offering the seller's shareholders to sell their shares during a specific period at a specific price. And a tender offer enables a connection between the buyer and the shareholders of the target directly, without the interference from the management team or the board of directors. So you can by using the tender offer, you can directly contact the shareholders and get their shares without the formal approval. So it can be a very effective way to complete an acquisition in a relatively short period of time. And also, one of the other benefits in tender offer is that it can be canceled later. So let me talk about this. So if you want to buy a share of a company, then you can have a tender offer, or you can just purchase the shares in the stock market. So purchasing without noticing that you are buying is known as the open market purchase. And on the other hand, tender offer means you are announcing who you are and why you are buying and at what price you are buying. So in the tender offer, the investors will know you are buying as an acquirer, and also they know that how much you are going to pay for each of the share. So there is a specific price. On the other hand, if you do not reveal yourself and you just buy the shares of the company in the market, then the price can differ. Sometimes the stock price can go up so that you have to pay a lot. On the other hand, sometimes the stock price can be low so that you don't have to pay a lot. And the tender offer specifies the period, the time. So by the end of the day, you specified, for example, if today is November 30, and if I offer a tender offer by December 10, then all shareholders who are willing to sell their shares should apply before December 10. Otherwise, their shares will not be purchased by myself. So you have a specific timeline, so it can be accomplished very quickly. On the other hand, if you are just buying shares in the market, then you cannot buy the shares when there are no people selling the shares. So it may take longer than you expected. And the other benefit of the tender offer is that it can be canceled. For example, let's say I'm trying to acquire Samsung Electronics, for example, and then I have a lot of money, but the Samsung Electronics current owner, the CEO, Jae-yong Lee, didn't want that acquisition. So he is not in favor of my acquisition. And then he wants to defend the company. And then I started to collect the shares of Samsung Electronics through the tender offers. And I want to have at least 50% of the shares, because if I have 50% of total shares, then I can pass the shareholders meeting whatever I want. On the other hand, if I have only 40% of the shares, then if the others do not agree on my proposal, then my proposed decision will be rejected in the shareholders meeting. So if I want to control my company, then I must have the majority of the shares. However, sometimes in the tender offers, sometimes there are some shareholders willing to sell their shares, but the number can be insufficient. For example, let's say only 40% of shareholders agreed to sell the shares to me. And this is problematic for me because I didn't achieve my goal of 50%. But yet I have 40% of shares. It means nothing to me right now. So in that case, I can just cancel my tender offer, and then they do not give the shares to me, and all the shares belong to the original owners. So it's like nothing happened yet. On the other hand, if I purchase the shares in the Seoul market, then it is already mine, so I cannot cancel the transactions. So sometimes I tried my best to acquire the company, but it failed. Then I have to take care about my shares that I already bought. So this is causing a lot of cost to me. So in that sense, tender offer is more flexible, so it is more favored. The second way of attacking a company is using proxy fights. So this is so it's the tender offer is buying the shares so that I can win my proposal in the shareholders meeting. On the other hand, the proxy fight is making all shareholders as my friend in the shareholders meeting. So in a proxy contest or a fight is to obtain shareholders proxy. So here the proxy is a statement that the writer is agreeing on whatever I want. So if I have enough proxies, then I can use these proxies as my vote. So I can pass my proposals in the shareholders meeting. So when I want to have a proxy contest, I can contact the shareholders of the target company through various methods. For example, in the past, we often had phone calls and postal mails. And right now, these days, we can use emails or SNS. And through the proxy contest, we want to have only three things. First, we want to appoint a director who is in favor of us, so that the board of directors can approve the acquisitions later. Second, we want to oppose the manager's proposal so that they cannot defend their company. And finally, we want to pass a proposal to merge this company with our company. So using this kind of proxy contest, we can also have a successful hostile takeover. And now, from now on, I'm going to talk about the same process, the M&A, from the point of view of the defender, the manager of the target company. So sometimes, generally, people don't want to lose their job. So the problem, if I'm a manager, if I'm a CEO of a target company, most frequent situations is that after the acquisition or merger, I will lose my job because the acquirer will fire me and they will bring a new CEO. So generally, I do not like this kind of situation. So because I want to preserve my job, and because directors think the same way, so generally they are against the hostile takeover. And there are several ways to achieve this objective. The first is to use poison pill. A poison pill means something like the real poison in the reality. So this is a charter provision. So this is a law for the company. Before that, first you need to understand what a corporate charter is. A corporate charter is some law for the company. So you are, for example, you are a citizen of the Republic of Korea. So it means you have to follow the law legislated by the National Assembly in Yeouido, right? So similarly, if you are a company's managers or employee, then you have to follow the corporate charter. And the poison pill is a legal term inserted in the corporate charter, and it will give the authority or the right to issue new shares for the existing shareholders. So it will be exercised. So in other words, if a certain company has a poison pill, then a lot of new shares will be issued when there is a hostile takeover, and this when the acquirer owns certain level of the ownership, or if the acquisition is completed. And then because the number of shares will be increased very quickly, so that the acquirer cannot have sufficient number of shares. And also because the number of shares increase, because due to the dilution, the stock price will fall, and therefore the acquirer can be damaged. So let me explain through an example. Let's say there is a target company. However, this company has a poison pill in its corporate charter, and currently the number of shares is 1,000, and the stock price is $10 per share, and there is an potential acquirer, and it has 20% ownership. Then in that case, the poison pill will be activated, and if it is activated, the existing shareholders can pay $60 and get 12 new shares from the company. So let's say this potential acquirer indeed achieved 20% of the ownership, because it has now 200 shares among 1,000 shares existing. Then the other shareholders can exercise the poison pill. Then for each of the other shares, there can be new shares up to 12 shares for each of the share. So therefore, the number of new shares issued will be 9,600. It means, and at the same time, because for each of the shareholder, they will pay $60 to the company as the payment for the new shares. So before this poison pill, we had $10 share, a $10 stock price, and there were 1,000 shares. So the market value was 10,000. However, now there is an input for the equity. So we have $60 for each of the shares. So we have 60 times 800. So the market value of equity will become $58,000. But because the number of the shares are so many, the stock price will fall. We had only 1,000 shares before the poison pill to be exercised. However, after the poison pill activated, we have additional 9,600 shares. So in total, we have 10,600 shares. And it will make the stock price as almost half of the original price. So the price will become about $5.50. and therefore the hostile acquirer is negatively affected. He already bought his shares at $10 per share. However, now the stock price becomes $5, so her or his or her rate of return is about minus 45%. Also, because this guy is having only 200 shares, so before the poison pill, it takes about 20%, 200 over 1000. However, now the number of shares are 10,000, so it's only about 2% of the total shares. So actually, he cannot participate in the management decision of the company, not anymore. So through the poison pill, you can defend your company from a hostile takeover. The second way of protecting your company is to protect the directors. This can be done through a staggered board. A staggered board, or sometimes it is known as a classified board, this is limiting the number of directors who can be appointed or replaced at a time. So it means you will take many years, at least for example 3 years, to replace all of the directors in the board of directors. For example, if there is a rule stating staggered board in your company, and if the staggered board limits your ability to replace the directors to a third, then you need 3 years to change all of the directors and to appoint the directors who you like. So therefore, it takes 3 years to completely control the company. And this can be the effectiveness, the impact of the staggered board can be maximized when you use this with poison pill, because through the poison pill you are making a hostile takeovers ownership very low, and at the same time you can prevent the situation where the board of directors are removing the poison pill in the board, because through the staggered board you are protecting the boards. So this is very powerful measure to defend your company from a hostile takeover. So the poison pills and staggered boards were so powerful, so people realized that when a company has both of them, actually there is no possibility to do a hostile takeover. So people realize that the poison pills and staggered boards are too powerful, so that the managers are so protected, so nobody can fire the current CEO. So it is making the power, giving the power to the CEO a lot. So the CEO can do whatever they want, and then maybe the company cannot be managed successfully. So to prevent the situations, people started a campaign to reduce poison pills and staggered board in the companies. So as you can see, we have a decreasing trend for the companies using poison pills in their corporate charter, and also the number of companies having staggered boards are also decreasing. However, if you look at the types of the companies, we have three different categories for the companies. The blue line here, the blue represents large corporations, and this one is middle-sized company, and this one is a small companies. And you can see that large corporations are reducing staggered board, but on the other hand, the small companies, they are still using this kind of protection for their companies. This is because large corporations are many people and the mass media tries to monitor the large corporations, so large corporations cannot protect themselves, so they are following the demands and the pressure from the media to reduce the staggered board. On the other hand, for the small companies, sometimes media doesn't give their focus to the small companies. Also, and the other reason is because small companies emphasize the protection of their control. The managers tries to preserve their power, so they do not want to give up the staggered board in their companies. So that's why there is no reduction in the number. There are a very small number of reductions for the small companies, but for the larger corporations, you can see a dramatic decrease in the number of staggered boards. Another defensive tactics is to have a super majority voting rule in your company. Generally, you require 50% of the vote to pass a proposal in your company. However, this super majority voting rule requires a higher fraction of the vote. For example, two of the third, or the 80% of the approval to pass a proposal. For example, especially they require 80% or 66% approval for a merger or an acquisition, so that as a hostile takeover acquirer, you need to have more voting power. So it can weaken the strength of the acquirer. And the last one is the dual class shares. Dual class shares mean that you are going to have two different kinds of common stock in your company, and these two common stock will have different power in their voting rights. So for example, you will see a common stock with 1 vote per share, and these common stock shares will be given to the outside investors during the IPO. On the other hand, there are also other kinds of common stock shares that have more voting powers. For example, 10 votes per share. And this is retained by only the insiders. For example, the founder of the company. So there is a class difference between normal investors and the insiders. So let me explain how dual class shares can prevent a hostile takeover. So let's say the number of shares is 1,000, similarly to the previous example. And among 1,000 shares, we have 900 shares of Class A common stock. And these shares have 1 vote per share. On the other hand, the rest of the shares 100 shares are given to the founder, and each of the share has 10 votes per share. And then your ownership is, as a founder, is 10%, because you are having 10% of the total shares outstanding. However, your voting power is calculated differently. So here, for each of the share you are having, you have 10 votes. So therefore, your total votes are 100 times 10, which is 1000. On the other hand, the other shareholders have 900 votes in total. So therefore, you can have 53% of voting power in any situation. It means if there is a usual majority voting rule, then you can decide whatever you like. You can, if you approve a proposal, then it will be passed. If you decline or if you do not like another offer, then it will not make it. So you can be a ultimate decider in a corporation. So if all other shareholders are gathered together and they want to break you down, they cannot succeed, because you are having the majority of the voting power retained by yourself. So you can rule this company forever. And then these dual class shares are also very powerful. So sometimes we'd like to restrict the power of the class shares, and one way to achieve it is sunset provision. So this sunset provision is a general term regarding the situation where there is a law or a statement. However, it will become ineffective. So it will be removed at a certain condition. And there are 3 different kinds of sunset provisions for dual class shares. There are transfer-based sunsets. This is activated when the founder, the holder of the dual class shares, give her shares to someone else. So when there is a transfer, then the sunset will be activated, and these shares will be transformed into normal shares with 1 vote per share. And there are also time-based sunset. These will be activated when certain day comes. So the shares with multiple votes will be transformed automatically into normal shares at a specific date. And finally, there are incapacity-based sunset. So sometimes there is a problem in the dual class shares. So let's say a founder is having a dual class shares, and it is about 60% of voting power. And suddenly he becomes ill, so he is in the hospital. And because there is no approval from the founder, then the company cannot do anything. So in order to prevent that kind of situation, when the founder becomes capable of doing ordinary businesses, then the shares can be transformed into normal shares so that the others can make decisions for the company. So in Korea, before 2023, this year, we didn't have dual class shares. However, this year, on April 27, in the parliament, we passed an amended act on special measure for the promotion of venture businesses. And now, thanks to this act or the law, now in Korea we can have dual class shares. And because of this, now we can now the venture founders can protect themselves. And so the purpose of this change is to protect the rights for the venture founders so that there can be more and more venture firms and startups, and we expect in the future these venture companies can grow so that the rest of the country can be benefited. However, because there are certain concerns about the dual class shares, in the past law, we are limiting the time. So we have a time-based sunset. So only the dual class shares can exist up to 10 years. And if the company has IPO, then it will be demolished in 3 years. So that's the condition for the dual class shares in Korea.